This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Oh, this is my kind of book. Absolutely my kind of book. Rare Breed. The authors, Sunny Bonnell, Ashleigh Hansberger. This is the unconventional business book for you rebels and misfits out there, the rare breeds who don't fit the traditional mold. Here's the big question. What if your biggest weaknesses are actually your greatest strengths? Sunny and Ashleigh, both award-winning brand consultants, founders of Motto. They bring their wisdom, their insights to this radical outside-the-box business perspective. And they've put everything together in this kind of like maverick, oddball, visionary way. I love their perspective, going against the grain, going against the conventional. What are those traits in you and your business often thought of as shortcomings? How can they become the tools for creation and growth? Let's jump right into my very energized conversation with Sunny Bonnell and her book, Rare Breed.
So no plans on coming back, or?
You know, that's an interesting question. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know if I'll be here permanently, but I think once you get outside the bubble of the States, which I grew up in the DC area, then it changes you. When I read the table of contents for your book, I'm like, well, this is giving me all the approval that I need. Every one of these chapters is like literally speaking to me. Okay.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love it. So Meg did she give you the galley copy or she gave you like a PDF?
I have PDF.
Okay, good. Perfect.
I mean, maybe you guys have some stuff here and there, but it looks like it's a pretty finished book, what I've got.
We've done a couple of final further edits from there, but for the most part, it was pretty buttoned up.
Yeah, it's tough to put a book to bed. You always want to keep doing it.
Oh my gosh, I know. We are the ultimate obsessed people and absolutely agonized and probably drove our editor crazy during this process. I mean, we just would send back entirely new chapters and she was like, guys, stop.
That once you get past the sending back new chapters, then it's like, hold on, I want to change these 2 words on page 113. These 2 words must be changed or the book can't go out.
Exactly. No, they know what they were dealing with when they brought us on, because it's kind of a funny story. We may save it for the talk. Our first proposal got rejected by every major publisher. Everyone told us we couldn't go back with the same name. And of course we didn't listen and went back in. And we talk a little bit about it in the book, but I mean, our agent was like, guys, this is just absolutely stupid. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
The title Rare Breed, they were saying was stupid?
No, they were saying that, like, so in the publishing world, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but like normally if you go out with one name, a title of a book, and it gets rejected, their advice is, or the guidance is, don't go back out with that same name, because many of those acquisitions editors have probably already seen that title and they're like, didn't I already say no to this thing one time? That was the guidance from many consultants that we conferred with, and they all said, go rewrite it, but you need to change the name. Like you shouldn't be able to keep that name. And so we were like, fuck you.
It was always called Rare Breed. They rejected it. And then they said, okay, if you're going to come back at us, give us a new title.
That was the guidance of everyone around us in terms of like even people that we conferred with about going back. Even our agent who had been with us for a while was like,
was any of the publishers, including your agent, reading your table of contents? It's pretty obvious that you weren't.
I know. She was like, she goes, I know you're not going to listen to me, but I just need to give you my best advice. Like, you're going to go back out and you're going to piss them off by doing this. We didn't listen.
I had a situation with a book title once where the book title was a one-word title, and then there was a competitive book, and the publisher wanted to add the word complete to the front of it to kind of, I don't know what it was. This is the dumbest thing, but I was in no position of leverage to tell them that this was stupid, but it was stupid. So.
Oh my gosh.
So listen, I'll do an intro for you in post, and this is not live. Ums and ahs get edited out, all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll basically just jump right in. Hold on. I'm not sure who I'm speaking with.
Oh, all right, good. So I'm Sunny. I'm the other co-conspirator.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, because I had it down for Sunny and Ashleigh, so I wanted to make sure I had you who I was.
Yeah. We talked about it last night, and she was like, I just think like you've done more of them and you're a little bit more experienced, so I'm going to let you run with it. And I said, fine, it's cool.
Cool. Okay, let's jump right in. Give me a starting point. So you're a 2-woman team, and I'm guessing sometime in the early 2000s, you're together. Are you longtime friends, associates, colleagues, college? What? How did you meet?
We met in a snowball fight in 1997, just outside of Chicago. I had moved to Chicago to become a street musician, believe it or not. We met as young teens. We kind of grew up together, and we eventually went to college together in South Carolina. Maybe the first year and a half of college, we both were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our life, what we wanted to do with our career. And Ash was going down one track and I was going down another. Essentially, both decided that we were going to drop out of school and start a business together.
And this business, advertising, branding company, PR?
Motto is a branding agency that works with ambitious startups and scaling companies to help them sort of disrupt markets and reinvent industries. We work with them to shape not only the mindset of how they think about brand, but also work with them to build their brand, sometimes from scratch, sometimes at different points of where they're trying to reinvent or scale or grow or take them through transformations, and just help them sort of brand their business in the market.
But that's the very polished statement now. How many years after you started?
We are a little over a decade. So almost, 2005. So what would that be?
Did you say it exactly that way in 2005?
Oh, goodness, no. I mean, we were 20-something women with $250 to our name, had no agency experience. Everyone told us that we would fail. And we were up against, in the town that we were in at the time, much more established players. There were probably 2 or 3 major advertising agencies in the area who had all of the clients, all of the money. They were far grander than we could have ever imagined. And here we were coming at them with pretty sharp knives saying, we're going to flip this thing on its head. And it was mostly because we did have a little bit of experience prior going into the agency in terms of freelancing. I had particularly been freelancing on the side. I was a musician. I grew up a musician, and I started doing band gigs and posters and CD art and things of that nature very early on when I was in college, studying to be a veterinarian. Quite an interesting shift to go from designing on the side, studying in vet, to be a veterinarian, dropping out of college to then go on and start an agency.
Let me get back to the starting of the agency. You've got the $250. You've got a partner. You've got ambition. You don't want to play it safe. At least I think at this stage of the game, you don't want to play it safe because you got nothing to lose, right?
Right.
So what do you do? Like, what's the first step? I mean, I can still think back to putting up a website in 1996. It didn't make any money for the first 6 months, but then it did. So, I mean, I'm actually one of these few people that can say I've seen e-commerce all the way back to 1997. What was the first step? What was the trigger? What started to get you over the hump to get the first client?
The first 2 years of our business, we were very broke. We were not able to pay ourselves. We were struggling. No one knew who we were. It wasn't until we had this sort of bright idea. I mean, we were probably a few weeks within closing our doors. And we had this sort of bright idea that we would send out a mailer. And now keep in mind, 2004, 2005, that's when yellow pages are still in effect. I mean, we think it's so long ago, but the reality is it's actually not that long ago at all. The yellow pages were still a thing. People were calling us through the yellow pages, and we were just like, there has to be a better way. And that's when direct mail was starting to become a little bit more in the forefront of a tool that you could use. And so we spent our last, I think, $150 or $200 on this direct mailer. We bought a cheap list of companies outside of the area, even extending out beyond regionally to bigger cities. We made this die-cut garbage can that was like fluted, and we spent a lot of money making it as nice as we could. And when you pulled the lid out, all it said was "Trash the Ordinary." And then when you flipped it over, it had our website and our phone number. And we mailed all of those businesses one of those garbage cans. Within about 24 to 48 hours, people were showing up at our office, ringing the phone, contacting us, wanting to know who we were. And I think that moment was probably the sort of turning point in the business. But it wasn't the first set of setbacks. There were so many more that happened after that of course tested our tenacity and our willpower and of course our heart and everything else. That was probably the shift that took place, was when we did that. And we got our first client, who was an ahead of the curve dentist who kind of in his own words wanted to disrupt. Back then they didn't use that word. They wanted to do something different. He wanted to do something bold. And we were just the right fit for it because we were unafraid. We didn't like what we saw in the industry. So we wanted to change that conversation. Whether we knew what we were doing or not is beside the point. We just knew that we were going into it and we were saying, how can we help this traditional, unsexy business think in a very different way? How can we help him essentially disrupt a traditional category? And that's what we did. And that led to other businesses reaching out. We started to gain accolades, press. People started to hear about us. And quickly after that, we started to get calls from San Francisco and calls from New York. It was interesting because here we were in this tiny little town. We were completely attracting clients from all over.
How much of this do you attribute, because I can hear it in your voice, how much do you attribute this to kind of this direct passion, like this unafraid passion to walk in the room and tell whoever you're talking to, you don't care who they are. I mean, you care who they are. You don't want to insult anybody. You're not being a jerk or anything, but you don't care who they are in the sense that you're just going to give it direct how you see it. It seems like, I don't know you, obviously, but it seems like that was a huge part of it, that you could just walk in the room and you weren't a stuffy suit worried about this or that the people could genuinely feel that you know what their problem is and you've got a way to maybe get around it.
I think that we had an uncanny knack for cutting through the BS, for being unafraid to challenge traditional thinking or to challenge the status quo, because we were just young and brave. I really think we were fearless in our opinions because we had nothing to lose. There was nothing to fall back on. We had given it up. I mean, clearly going down the path of becoming a veterinarian was probably a safer path than the one that we chose. Ashleigh was going to go down the path of being an English major, perhaps a teacher. There was a direct path for both of us, and we forgoed that to chase this ambition. What I think we learned very early on is that when you have vision, when you have dangerous thinking, when you defy the status quo, even though we had just had a taste of it in a small town, we could only imagine that the rest of the world was like that. Many people told us we were crazy. Many people, our mentors and friends, and some of my family and her family were like, guys, what are you doing? You're going up against these big players. You are sitting across from people who have far more experience in their companies than you do. And you're going in and you're giving them a slice of what you think they need to do differently. What we realized was that came with a price. While many of our friends and other people were sort of living it up in college, we were literally slugging this out in boardrooms. We were going toe to toe with very opinionated people as well, and sort of trying to find our stance in a place that seemed to not want us. I believe that sheer force of just audacious vision, this sort of hot-blooded passion, all of the things that we ended up writing about in our book a decade later were the very things that I think were the keys to what unlocked every door that we walked through.
But your critics at the time, family, friends, associates, colleagues, whatever, they weren't going down the path you were going down. They were doing something else. So they're giving some perhaps good intention feedback, perhaps some of it not good intention. Sometimes family and friends can give feedback that's not helpful on purpose. Who the heck knows what people's motivations are? But You guys knew that the critics that you were dealing with were not going down your path. So how could they really give you good advice?
Well, I think that people that give you advice, they mean well. They want the best for you. In some cases, our parents, our friends, our teachers, they've lived their own life and they've taken some of those hard punches.
But you say they want the best for you. But what best is this? This is the whole point of this rebellious, audacious, obsessed, hot-blooded, weird, hypnotic, emotional book. They want the best for you. Well, what the heck is the best that they want?
Well, I think that they're short-sighted because in their mind, they've framed what they feel is the path of least resistance. They don't want to see you get hurt. And when you embody some of the things that we're talking about in this book, it comes with a great deal of pain. You are going to be shot down. You may even be the own constructor of your own failures in some way because of tapping into those things and not listening. It doesn't mean that in the grander schemes of things that you won't win. It just simply means that you have to endure. That's what passion means. It means to suffer, endure. When you go after and you chase the thing that makes you come alive, of course, people are going to steer you away from it most of the time. Not always. My parents, for example, were great encouragers. Did they also put a dog ear on that and say, but by the way, know that this path you're going down is a dangerous one? Well, yes, of course. But when you're 20 something, you don't think like that. You just go all in. At least we did.
What's so funny about that advice is they say it's a dangerous path, but it's just as dangerous to be the person that gets out of school with a liberal arts degree and goes down whatever path. And then one day when they're 45, somebody walks in and says, you're fired.
You're exactly right. I think so many of us are like these slumbering lions. We're walking through life. We are bumbling through our day. We clock in, we clock out. We are on someone else's time, agenda, mission, whatever it may be. In some way, we lose sight of who we are, and we get good at being quiet. We get good at just sort of putting our head down and doing the work. That was never us. We don't know what that life is like because it never was in us. It never could have been in us. I think whether it would have erupted then or erupted a few years in, I believe that at some point we would have flipped the switch and said, you know what, we're going all in on who we are and owning who we are and making that a part of the work that we do.
Again, when I look at this table of contents and I look at the terms here, I'm just admiring of the way it's even laid out, because in some ways, honestly, I mean, people could just literally just read your table of contents and not even touch the book and be ready to go run into a wall. I mean, seriously. I mean, just because you're like, let's go do it. Let's go. Who was driving you? Who are the mentors? I mean, was it other authors of like-minded material? Who was driving you? Who was influencing you in those first few formative years?
Oh, I mean, Ashleigh and I both came from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur. Ashleigh's father was an entrepreneur. Her grandfather was an entrepreneur. I think it made it very difficult for us to not go down that path. However, strangely enough, even though they coaxed it and encouraged it, they were always sort of tempering it with their wisdom and guidance. But I would say that my parents had a huge influence on Ashleigh and I growing up. I watched my dad grow up in a coal mining camp, leave that coal mining camp, start his own company, I think with less money than Ashleigh and I did. I think he started his own company with about $150. 3 guys left a coal mining camp to start a company with no college education. And I watched him grow it into a multi-million-dollar business, being one of the greatest commercial contractors on the East Coast. I watched him. I grew up just doors down from him, essentially, as we were starting our business in the warehouse that we were in. He was working in one end of it and we were working in the other. So I got a front row seat, we both did, to his failures, to his ambitions, to his work ethic, to his philosophies. Both him and my mom were incredibly influential during that point in time. But of course, because they were our shepherds through that process, they often would sort of say, shouldn't you dial back the fluffy talk? Maybe you shouldn't have such rough edges. Maybe you guys should just try to fit in a little bit more. Maybe this renegade rogue attitude that you have, this unorthodox approach isn't working for you. They tempered that advice too. And yet at the same time, they wanted us to succeed. It was a little bit of that. I think what you have to do in those moments is to listen to your own voice. And I think as they began to see that Ashleigh and I were not going to quit and that we were going to keep pushing and that we were determined to make it work. I think they said, you know what, these guys got it figured out and we're just going to root them on as best as we can.
When the outline, the beginning of the book, you talk about playing it safe, not playing it safe. But I like this phrase, if you want to succeed, you have to own who you are. But it's one of those phrases, it's one of those sentences, you hear it, you're like, okay, I have to own who I am. But what does it mean to you? It might mean something different to somebody else.
I believe that being defiant, dangerous, and different is actually a gift. It's why it's the subtitle of the book. I think in this life, there's a lot of opportunities to want to be other people. You look at their life, you want to fit into their shoes, you want to do what they're doing, you want to achieve those successes. You start to take on other people's agendas and ideas of who you should be, and you forget the one thing that matters, which is your voice, your own urging to do what fills you. If you have the ability to choose between a life that is unfulfilled and sort of longing, if your whole life is filled with longing to do something other than what you're doing, I believe, and Ashleigh believes, that you should not ignore that you should double down on who you are, not just the pretty parts, but you should find what the things are that make you come alive and chase those things with all your might. There's a chapter in the book, chase down your passion like it's the last bus of the night. Many people do not do that. They never spend the time to ask themselves, what matters to me? Why do I feel the way that I do? Who am I? And in a world that's increasingly chaotic, that's more than happy to tell you the path that you should be on. And not to say that all of those success books and all of these other paths, that they don't have rewards. We're not saying that at all. We're just saying there's an alternate path to success. And this is one of them. We believe that if you can tap into those things, the things that other people tell you that you shouldn't be rebellious, you shouldn't be audacious, you shouldn't be overtly passionate and hot-blooded to the point that you will suffer for it. If you can tap into those things and make them come alive and use them in the right ways. Not saying, again, in the book, we talk about the duality of these things, right? There's duality to these vices. That's why they're called vices. It was very important for us to understand that there's a danger to these things as well. But once you know how to temper them, it's like a slow simmer, a slow cook. Once you know how to activate them, utilize them, and turn them on in the right ways, I believe that it can actually be remarkable keys to your success and to unlock doors to a career and a life that maybe you had never dreamed of before. And so we really do, and have seen that, not just through our own lives, but through the work that we did with hundreds and hundreds of leaders and organizations. Keep in mind, we've been doing this for almost 15 years. We've worked with an immeasurable amount of leaders, organizations, teams, both people who within the company, both at the leadership level, both within teams, both entry level, people who have lots of career ambition. And we started to make connections and see patterns in the way that they think, act, and communicate. That's how this book was really born, was seeing that all of the things that sort of many organizations quiet down are actually the things that they should be pushing on and getting people to sort of activate so that they can utilize that to the best of their ability within an organization. Keep in mind, a lot of these organizations don't want the rebel. They don't want the ruckus. They say they do. But when you get a rebel in an organization who's loud, who's questioning how you do things, you're like, you're kind of making a scene here. Like, we want you to quiet down. We're saying, actually, there's a place for them. There's a place for them in every organization. You just need to know how to nurture and utilize that so that it becomes a competitive edge.
Let's get to the title for a second, because we were talking about it early on. When I see rare breed, and you mentioned to me that a lot of people didn't like it initially, publishers and whatnot, because I guess you could have said, you too can become a rare breed. Everybody can become a rare breed. It's kind of like an oxymoron. I mean, it's like, hold on, it's rare breed. It means not everyone's going to do it. Was that one of the reasons that people didn't like it? Because it's kind of a book that's motivational. There's self-help perspective to it, But when you call it rare breed, it's not exactly inviting to everyone. It's kind of saying it's limited at the top. But what I like about it is at least it's honest, because, you watch, for example, you watch all the parents and the kids' sports and all this stuff, and the parents all imagine that their Johnny is going to be the next professional player. And all you got to do is look at a little bit of the statistics and everyone knows what the deal is, right? So I like the fact that you went rare breed. It still gives people the ability to say, if I really want to do it, here's a roadmap, here's a blueprint for me to go down. But if I really don't want to do it, my gosh, I'm reading this and I don't know. I don't really have this in me. I mean, we all know that 7.5 billion people on the planet, we all can't be rare breeds. Those 7.5 billion people on the planet all can't be the next millionaire, billionaire, etc. So there is a certain rarity to this. And I think you're being very straightforward and honest in the title. It doesn't mean, though, for example, and I'm sure you're going to say this, it doesn't mean that people can't take parts of what you are saying, apply it to their life, use it wisely. But rare is rare.
By definition, rare breeds are unordinary among their kind. They are, in fact, a rarity. The answer to your question is sort of a maybe, because we believe that rare breeds are, in fact, rare. It's like the sea of oysters and the one pearl. The question that we kept continuing to ask ourselves is, why do some people stand out? Why do others fade into the background? In a world that's sort of full of commodity and distractions and competition, in this crazy, crazy world, it's becoming even more important to stand out. Whether you're a brand, a business, a human, you're vying for someone's attention. You're vying to get a grip on them. Whether you're applying for a job, you're a filmmaker, you're a backup dancer, you're making a connection, and either they're going to remember you or they're not. The real answer is it's a maybe, because we believe that what separates rare breeds from everyone else is this sort of one truth. While other people sort of suppress these qualities, rare breeds are leaning into theirs. They're celebrating them. They're letting them off the leash. They're running like hooligans through the corridors of entrenched power. They're trying to use their differences as a competitive edge. When we say that there's a lot of people walking around not tapped into that and not really awakening it, I think that's actually true. In our experience, working with all of these leaders, working with all these organizations, studying these behaviors, studying these patterns, you begin to start to see that there's even trends in the way that people that we work with at Motto, specifically working with different leaders to launch brands and launch disruptive ideas. There's a handful of them that will go on to greatness. Many of them, though, will get in their own way. They will walk to the ledge and they will not take the leap. They will say that they're one thing and they will do another. And we see this time and time again in the organizations that often we work with. They think they want to be bold. They think they can be bold. And then when they actually see what bold and brave looks like, they don't want the backlash. And so they kind of temper that rah, 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 that rally call, that flag in the air. And they say, well, we want to find the toned down version of that. But the ones who really do own who they are and go forth towards that awakening, we see them go on to do extraordinary things, both in whether they're a young leader coming up through an organization who eventually goes on to do their own thing, or they are a CEO or a co-founder or whatever the situation may be, where they have tapped into that and they're utilizing that to the best of their ability. As a matter of fact, we're doing a video series called Rare Breed. In season 1, we interview 7 rare breeds, both inside and outside the world of business. And we're very different in that we don't just talk about what success looks like. We talk about how this individual has used one of the 7 vices in the book to turn it into a virtue. And when has those things not only been celebrated, but when have those things actually backfired? And so our very first episode is with Charlemagne the God. He's a huge media personality, known for making a ruckus, known for being very audacious, opinionated. He's ruffled many, many feathers. He almost lost his HBO series because of it. He was fired from Wendy Williams' show. And yet he's gone on to become one of the greatest media personalities in the world. We talked a lot about his audacity. in that interview, it was very revealing to us about how audacity can be this sort of thing that unlocked every door to his career. And yet it was the thing because he didn't understand the power of his words. He didn't understand quite confidently what the consequence of some of his actions were, that he found himself almost apologizing for that earlier Charlemagne the God. Anybody who names themselves the God has to be audacious as fuck, right? Like you don't just give yourself that name without having a pretty visionary, ruckus-making sort of persona. But what we found during that interview was very revealing, which was here was a guy who grew up a certain way, who didn't understand that some of what he was doing and saying was actually wrong and was hurting people. And it wasn't until he started to use that audacity and began to use that audacity as a force for good has he now begun to mature into utilizing those vices in the right way. So they can in fact be dangerous, and they can in fact hurt, and they can in fact destroy. That's what we talk a lot about in the book, is how do you activate the power and the positive of it, and how do you also acknowledge the negative, and how do you balance and temper those two things and sort of balance the light and the dark of each one.
Let me keep you at the F-bomb you just dropped. So I generally do not use fucks on interviews on this podcast. So I've done 750 podcast episodes. I'd probably say 66% are interviews, unless a guest has used, and I usually don't use myself, but I will do these monologues where I talk. And when I talk, I just wind myself up. And as a former baseball catcher, the F-bombs start dropping. I did remember very early on, I would get some feedback, and it was kind of like these old dudes that just, I don't know, they didn't want to hear it, So here I am, though. You just dropped your first fuck of the podcast. So I'm looking at your first chapter, and it's fuck norms. Okay, so, not only, I can use it when I say it like that, right? Fuck norms, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So what I'm getting at, though, is the phrase fuck norms could be said in other ways. You could say that in another way. You said it very specifically for your first chapter that way. And I'm sure you bump into people that want to turn your salty tongue down. Look, and there's a bunch of books out there right now. You're just doing it as a chapter, but there's a bunch of books. If you go into a bookstore, I was in one in Singapore recently, and there was on the bestsellers list, it was 5 books that had the word fuck in the title on the front cover. You're very toned down compared to that. But what is it about when you feel the need to use that phrase for your first chapter? Because it really sets the tone of where you're going, as opposed to saying it some other way.
Again, back to this sort of owning who you are. I wouldn't say I'm a sailor of a cusser. I certainly know people who far drop the F-bomb more than I do. We were trying to make a statement. We wanted to say a statement. It goes beyond just saying disrupt the norm or defy the norm. No, it's fuck norms. That is a declaration of putting your fist down on the table and saying these confines, these constructs that sit unchallenged, they become petrified. They become rigid beliefs. And sometimes you have to throw the right hook. You have to drop the bomb. You have to shake things up to get people to pay attention.
Is it a filter for you, though, too, in the sense that when you say F norms, if that alone has caused them to break down and they're already questioning you or thinking something negative towards you, is that a good filter in the sense that yourself, you're saying F norms, and the people on the other side of the table hear the F norms? If they don't like it, maybe it's a good filter. We just move on and separate and not work together.
Yeah, I believe that sometimes those values don't align. This is the same for even the companies that we work with, and sometimes the people that we meet, at networking events, for example. There's just an alignment in values and what you hold to be truthful for yourself, what matters to you. And sometimes those things don't align. It's kind of like forcing a square peg into a round hole. And I'm a firm believer of you do you. If that is something that offends you and you don't think you can have a conversation with me because I said that word or because I said that in the book, then this book isn't for you, and that's okay. There's plenty other books out there that you would want to read. But this book is for the outlier. This book is for the people who are tired of walking around like the rest of the sheeple.
The sheeple? Hold on. Are you telling me the vast majority of people are walking around like sheeple?
Yeah, I would argue that there's a lot of, I'm in New York, and I look on the street every day and people are heads down. They're not looking around. They're not smiling. I don't know if they're unhappy or not.
To make this point, years ago, I did a documentary film. We went to a sheep farm to film the damn sheep.
There's a story about that. Actually, we talk a little bit about this in the book, but in the rules of sociological method from 1895, there's this social fact that institutions, values, and beliefs that exist outside the individual can constrain those who don't think or act as they dictate. This is actually, in fact, comes even to play a little bit later, where there are animals who are wild, who over time are conditioned to go in for testing purposes, put their head into some grates and stand there and be poked and prodded. That is not in their natural instinct. They've been conditioned. When we talk about this in the book, a lot of us have been conditioned. This is the way it is. You don't ask questions. You don't bump up against the walls. You do what you do. You climb the corporate ladder. You get a good job. You have children. This is the path. This is the American dream. Again, I think that works for some people. I don't think it works for everyone. This book is for those people who feel like something in them cannot wait to get out. And I think that this book can be a tool for those people who feel like misunderstood, or perhaps they're searching. They're in a job they don't love anymore. They're in a career they don't love anymore. Whatever it may be, this is a book for them to help them feel that someone said all those things that everybody told you you shouldn't be. Down deep, if those things are actually who you are, you can make them a competitive edge. You can make them the thing that makes you the standout. That's why it's called Rare Breed.
Let me lead you through a couple of these in our limited time. One of the things that I love in my experience is learning that not everyone is a friend. When you walk into the world of being a business person, an entrepreneur, or whatnot, you don't necessarily know where the slings and arrows are going to come from, but somebody wants to take you down. Somebody wants to sabotage you. You might not even know that person. And look, you're going to find these people that delightfully come out with their supposedly real reviews on Amazon soon enough.
You know? Hey now.
Yeah. Well, no, there's going to be a lot of real reviews. I'm talking about the ones that are going to be the one-star ones that paint you as the devil. But talk about that, though, the notion of sabotage, the people that really are out there and they don't want to celebrate with you. They don't want to go down your path. They're not excited by you. And they really just want to throw a wrench in front of you. They want to throw spikes on the road. They want to watch you mess up. They take glee from it. I think it's completely sick. I think it's crazy. I'll never understand it, but they're out there.
The bottom line is the status quo wants to stay the status quo. You are going to expect sabotage when you voice an opinion that goes against the grain. When you challenge biases, when you challenge preconceptions, those challenges, it will cause tension and people will come gunning for you. And the reality is you can either quiet that voice and continue to just like fall in line, or you can go all in and you can take the bullet, you can take the arrow in the back. That's why they're called pioneers. They're the first ones with the arrow in the back. I know that we're going to get heat for this book. I knew it when we wrote it. I understood it. We knew that maybe people would not agree with us, but there are so many more that will. There will be so many more that will find themselves in this book and that will get excited about it and will share it with their friends and talk about it and feel like they found something that feels like them. If people come after you, I mean, it's happened to us all. If people come gunning for you, then you should know that you have made a difference. Because where it's dangerous is when you don't spark debate, when you don't have anything that's polarizing at all, if you don't have anyone who feels anything about you. Why would you want that? Wouldn't you want somebody to revere you or just not like you? Why do you want to be in the middle? The middle is a dangerous place to be. So we wrote this book with a voice that's very powerful, very opinionated. It's because of that.
Who is not going to like it? I mean, even if somebody is just in the office cube. They really don't want to be an entrepreneur. They can't be an entrepreneur. Maybe they just thumb through the book. Maybe they buy it on Amazon, whatever. I have a hard time imagining how even someone who's not going to go down the path, how can they disagree? Like, what's going to be the part where they say, if you want to be the successful entrepreneur, you must be not rebellious. You must be not audacious. I mean, who's disagreeing? I mean, I just like the fact that you've ramped it up. You can tell now you got me ramped up.
I do believe that some people will not agree with the premise of it. I mean, some people may not agree that vices are virtues, and that's fine. We didn't write this book for them. We wrote it for people like you, for people who have ever stepped out of line, who have ever voiced an opinion that wasn't popular, anyone that spoke up in a meeting when there was an unjust or they saw an injustice. Or there's a great story in the book about a chef. Chad Hauser became a CNN hero. He's the chef of Cafe Momentum in Dallas, Texas. He takes kids that have been juvenile offenders. He takes them and he teaches them to cook in his kitchen. And he helps shape them into better adults and people who have learned a skill set in a world where they have very little support. Some of them are homeless. Some of them don't have families. Some of them are borrowing toothbrushes. I mean, you talk about a very sad situation. Here comes a guy who is an exemplary culinary chef, could have went down the path of opening a restaurant, a traditional restaurant, and he chose to take kids in juvenile detention and teach them how to play with fire and knives and cook in a restaurant where he could set himself up for all sorts of issues. And yet he has turned this into an incredible success. And everyone told him that he shouldn't do it, that he was crazy. What was he thinking? No one would back him. And here he has been able to revolutionize and turn these children's life around, giving them another chance at a different future. That's a great example of the kind of stories and the kind of people that are in this book that we are celebrating, because everyone told this guy that this would not work. You can turn that audacity, you can turn that emotion that he was feeling into a positive. It's a book for people like that who want to know that the things that they have been told they shouldn't be, rebellious, audacious, obsessed, hot-blooded, hypnotic, the charismatic leader, the charismatic voice in the room, emotional. You know, we're told not to be emotional. Oh, you're too emotional. You cry all the time. You're too sensitive. That is a force for good. That is a gift. That's what we're getting at.
When someone like you walks into the room and you start talking, maybe some people in the room don't like, but I'm sure many will. That is something that people sometimes don't grasp onto. And where I'm going with that is that you can find people that perhaps can't be you, but they can help you to get you to go where you want to go. I mean, I remember having a conversation with someone about a year ago in Hong Kong. He said, "What are you up to?" He's an older guy. And I said, "Hey, I'm doing this." And he's like, the first thing he said to me was, "Do you need help?" And it was like, he was 25 years older than me. He was not going down that path now, but he wanted to be a piece of some excitement.
And there's all types of other rare breeds. There's people who will identify with you, who genuinely want to see you succeed.
They're a rare breed too. They might not be the leader on the front line being you, but they might be the person that wants to stand next to you and help you. And they're a rare breed too.
Exactly. 100%. And in this book, and when we were writing this book, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but we talked a little bit about the book being rejected by every major publisher when we went out with it the first time. Everyone around us said, you should change the name, you should do this, you should do that. You know, there was a couple of core people at that point who were like, you know what? Fuck it. Keep the name. Go back out. Just rewrite it. You know, like we knew it needed some tweaking because the positioning of the book was actually at the time a branding book, which was not really the book that it eventually became or probably should have been in the very beginning. It took us getting all of those no's and turning them into a yes. It forced us to go and rewrite it and make it a far, far better book. But there were people who have gathered around us, people that have supported us, encouraged us, continued to fight alongside of us to make Rare Breed become what it is today. that support is because they align and see themselves in the material. They see themselves as being a little bit rogue, a little bit of an outlier. They felt misunderstood in their own life. I believe that's why so many people have encouraged us and pushed us and continue to celebrate this book, and how it's been received has been astonishing. I mean, so far we've gotten a lot of people really, really falling in love with the material, excited about the material, feeling like it's something that they haven't read before. I'm excited about that. I'm excited that other people are seeing themselves in the work, and that they want to feel a part of it, and that they want to be a part of the success. And that's exciting for us, because you want to feel like what you wrote and what you put your heart and soul into, it helped someone in their own life do something courageous, bold, brave, found a career that they really could come alive in. That's exciting for us.
I love the simple 3 words connected together that I jotted down from the book: decide and act. Like so much of life, make a damn decision and take an action. Make a decision and take an action. You can almost just like trace the paralysis that you witness in people to that. Okay, maybe they decide, but there's no action. And it's like, just decide and act, decide and act. That's just a beautifully simple couple words, 3 words, but just great.
You have to decide and you have to act. There cannot be one without the other, because you will be deciding and then you will never make that move. You will never take that first step. It's as simple as when Ashleigh and I went on a 9-month road trip across the country. There was no perfect timing. There was every reason that told us that we shouldn't do it. And yet we got in the car, we packed a couple of suitcases, and we just went. And it was the best time of our lives. We worked in different cities. We met people. We learned about ourselves. We made new connections. You know, we did some of the best work that we'd ever done. Like, there was every reason that traditional thinking would have said, hey, you've got a dog, you've got hamsters, you've got a life, you've got a business. Like,
people still have hamsters?
People still have hamsters.
Oh my God.
You'd be surprised.
All of my hamsters died in those tubes long ago. I had those tubes. You would go in there 1 week later, there'd be a dead hamster in the tube somewhere.
So true. So true. No, I've been seeing a lot of them on Instagram. But you know what I mean? Like, you have animals, you have life, you have a job. There's a lot of reasons why you don't act. You make excuses for yourself.
There's no blood in all that stuff. You want the blood pumping, right? You want something that says, let's go do this. Let's fight a fight. Let's make something happen. As you say, cause a ruckus.
The world needs more people that have come alive, period. It's an exciting way to live. If you can find something that truly makes your heart beat a little bit faster. And I hope that people that take something from this can find a little piece of that. Actually, it's one of the reasons that we just recently created a quiz where you can actually find out which vice you are and what the pros and cons of it are, and how to activate it in your life, and how to become, if you're a rebel, how do you activate that within your life, your organization, your team? What are the things that can possibly be a negative of that? You know, what do you need to watch out for? And then where other sort of famous rebels throughout time and throughout history, some that you may not even think was a rebel, are a rebel. It's kind of a cool little thing, so people can check that out.
I think I'm all 7 in a blender.
Well, a lot of people are. A lot of people do have pieces of this, but there is always one primary, and there's always usually a secondary. So a lot of people, for example, yes, this was something that we learned early on when we were studying it. We were like, well, everybody just has to have one that's sort of that main like archetype or that trait or that vice, if you will. But what we found is that there were many people who had a lot of one and then sort of a secondary trait that celebrated or that showed up in their life. So for example, with me, I am full-blown audacious, and I have a secondary trait of being obsessed. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a visionary thinker who is not afraid to tell you what I see, but I'm also incredibly obsessed with the details. I will agonize and almost drive people crazy with my attention to detail.
I can see it in you answering questions.
Definitely obsessed. Those are things that I've learned to celebrate. I remember in some scenarios where I had a lot of people who would tell me that my obsessive tendencies drove them crazy and they couldn't deal with it. And I started to begin to feel bad about it. You know, I was like, here I am, this person who's incredibly OCD with various things. why am I feeling so bad about it? I was beginning to feel bad that there was something wrong with being that way.
An OCD first-time author. Oh, the publishers are just having a field day over there.
Yeah. I mean, you know that so many of our greatest thinkers have had mental illnesses. They suffered from things like OCD. I mean, Steve Jobs was obsessive. Elon Musk is audacious. I mean, putting people on Mars, like people call them crazy. Instead of hiding those things and being ashamed of those things, how can you use them to be the thing that makes you you? Yes, it can lead to paralysis and poor decision making, and you never get anything done, but it can also make you do the greatest work of your life.
No doubt. There's no straight line. It's a lot of trial and error and figuring things out. But I can't keep you all day. We could just keep sharing vignettes here. The book, Rare Breed, A Guide to Success for the Defiant, Dangerous, and Different. Again, I just want to go, I don't want to say I want to kill anybody right now. I want to do something violent now, apparently. I don't know. I'm looking at the 7 right now. So if I want to do something violent, what does that make me right now? Maybe I'm audacious too. I don't know. Or the hot-blooded part. Okay, maybe a hot-blooded, audacious combination. Sunny, is there a website that you would like to direct people to?
Yes. You can check us out at thisisrarebreed.com. You can take the quiz at rarebreedquiz.com. And you can find us all over social media at This Is Rare Breed.
Cool. Thank you very much. Hey, by the way, you mentioned early, you said small city. Are you still in a small city? Where are you guys located?
We're in New York now.
You're in New York now. Where did you start?
We started in a small fishing village in South Carolina.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we started there, and, very small town, little beach town, not known for big business or anything like that. We eventually moved the business to Dallas. Really started to grow in Dallas. And that was kind of the beginnings of the idea of Rare Breed. And then when we moved to New York, we got the book deal and moved to New York to finish writing it. That's why we actually came here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean that coming from you, because I know that you have completely talked to so many bright people and smart people and reviewed so many books. And to kind of hear that feedback from you means a lot. It really does.
A lot of times when you see a work, there is usually one core thought in the book. And even great academics will get 300 pages out of one core thought. So I like the fact, though, that you guys are tackling a much bigger plate, so to speak. Life is complicated. It's more than just a few shades of gray. There's a lot of things going on. And so it speaks to me. You can tell.
Yeah, you felt fired up. I was like, I love this, because I'm so passionate about it.
I didn't even get a chance to ask about what, make your boots kinky is one of the chapters. Okay, I'm like, okay, the girlfriend, come here. We need kinky boots or something. I don't know. I don't know.
It's all about highlighting your competitive differences, and I think by being different, you become the standout, and that's what our entire work is about. It's about helping companies, leaders, and organizations and people, wherever they're at, whether they're a hairdresser or they're the CEO of a major company. How do you stand out in a sea of noise? How do you tap into that special something that makes you you? That is the entire thesis of the book. And it's because we went at it from these crazy, weird chapter titles, you begin to kind of see that the way we were thinking about it, it wasn't just another typical success book. It wasn't another typical leadership book. It was the opposite of that. It was important that we made people, like, when they're flipping through the chapters and they're like, massage the octopus. What?
Hold on. Does this one say pour hot sauce on my body? No, that's just pour hot sauce. Okay. I want to make sure. Okay.
Exactly. So it sounds like, kind of crazy, but when you actually read the lessons in them, you start to make the connections about how you can apply that to your life.
Great stuff. I appreciate it. When you do the second book, I know, because usually you can just tell when someone goes down this path, there's going to be a second one. I know you're thinking, no, we're not going to. And I'm saying, yes, you will. But you just don't know this yet. Maybe you already got a second deal. I don't know. But I'm saying you'll do a second book.
You know what I was thinking about? And you might think this is a silly idea. But, I even saw Rare Breed becoming something like, because as we were studying different categories, so for example, like we studied chefs, we studied people who were dancers, we studied people who were CEOs, and we just kind of went down this untraditional path of interviewing just about everybody. But like one thing that was really interesting to me was this could even be like rare breed for chefs, rare breed for dancers, like rare breed for filmmakers. Like, how do you kind of be that thing in whatever category you're in? So I could see this being its own sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I already have another idea for a book about we've learned so much by doing, quite frankly. I mean, we have no formal education in this. I mean, this is all just what we know and have learned by doing.
As the author of 5 books, I'm always proud to say that I never got above a C in English in either high school or college. So,
oh, wow. That's awesome, man. You have really, I was checking you out and I was really impressed. I mean, all the stuff that you've done is truly outstanding. I mean, it's really cool to see like how many listeners you have and how much you've carved out for yourself. It's really inspiring for sure.
But I don't say that though to be cocky. I just say it in response to what you're saying. But the point being is that literally it's all just practice and you get obsessed and maybe you don't know how to write. I mean, I sure as hell didn't know how to write, but you keep doing it after a while. The next thing you know, you start writing good stuff and you actually know it's good stuff. And then you start to figure out literally your voice that comes out of your mouth starts to go on the page and then they become symbiotic. That's when it's fun. I'm sitting here right now in Saigon, Vietnam, and I've got a bunch of notes in front of me and a couple pieces of paper. I don't have any questions. Generally, you're not going to find most people do interviews like that because I want to feel you. I want to feel where you're going and then try and lead it to some place and whatever inspires me in the moment. But most people don't do interviews like that. So I think, if this is one of your first ones, hopefully you'll be bored with all the others.
No, this was super fun. I mean, I just wanted to make sure that I gave you everything that you felt would be valuable for the listener, and if there's anything that, you want me to do it again, or you think it could be better, I'm totally down for doing it again.
No, I think you were good. I think, again, what I do with these things is my guy will edit them and then I listen to everything. And I've done this for 700 plus episodes and I will, if there's a couple sentences that need to cut based on my executive authority, I cut them. I always try to make the guests look good. We'll fix any crosstalk and all the ums and ahs and all that stuff. A lot of podcasts don't do that, so be aware of that. When you hear mine, it'll be clean as a whistle. And I've had guests of mine, they think, oh my God, I sound so good on mics. And then you go on another podcast and they're not doing it. So it's worth asking. It's worth asking people what kind of editing process they have, honestly.
No, I appreciated that. I listened to quite a few of your episodes and I love your energy first and foremost, because I have done quite a few podcasts, more so for Motto, not for the book. Sometimes they just didn't prep me or, you're right. Like the sound was not good. Like, and I listened to yours and first of all, I loved your enthusiasm. Second, I was like, man, this podcast is on point because I've done so many and I can just tell like the difference in the quality and the post-production and things like that. Really loved how you did it. And I could tell that you had shaped the conversation a little bit. So if you listen to it and there's something where you're like, you know what, I would have loved for you to expand upon this point. Like, let's just hop on for 10 minutes and ask me the question. I'm happy to do that. Sure.
I will. But I don't think there is, but I'll give it a listen. It'll probably be sometime since I've got you pushed out, maybe reconnect back in or something. I can even let you listen to it in advance if you're just curious.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I don't know if you really want to listen to it before it's edited, though. I have just finished a script about a crazy person that ends up in a place like Saigon, falls in love and all that kind of stuff.
Is this about you?
Right, yeah. Well, it's based on a true story, but in a country that we came and killed 4 million people, and they are super sweet. And I have to tell you, as I'm going out right now, attempting to put together a $30 million budget, this is the exact kind of attitude that the attitudinal reminder that I needed. Because I know when I sit down within that room, it's these things that you're talking about are the way that this project will get made. Absolutely, 100%.
No, I love that. Well, Godspeed to you. I'm excited to see what you do. Let me know if there's anything I can help you with in terms of like branding, or I'll even just, if you want to run something by me or just give you some advice on that, I'm happy to do.
If I get this baby funded, I absolutely will reach out.
Yeah, we do a lot of it. I mean, we help a lot of companies take their idea to market. We help them even build the pitch decks, get it funded. We can absolutely help in that regard.
One quick reminder. In all of our excitement, Sunny and I forgot to tell you to go check out the book. So please head on over to Amazon and give the book Rare Breed your full attention.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.